She jumped into the fight to save a customer only to hear, "Protect the Mafia Boss." The blue lighthouse was a lie. The neon sign sputtered a sick, buzzing magenta and bile yellow, bleeding onto the wet pavement of Venice Beach. Inside, the air was a thick cocktail of oxidized salt, stale beer, and the low-frequency hum of Tuesday night desperation. Tess Kincaid felt the vibration in the soles of her boots. This was her side gig, the one that covered the textbooks and certifications her primary emergency medical technician salary barely touched. Bouncer. It sounded tough. Mostly. It was just babysitting grown men who thought 5 beers made them heavyweights. Tonight was different. The bell above the heavy oak door did not just jingle, it slammed open, the wood crashing against the drywall. 3 men. They did not look like the usual Venice drunks or Sunday's tourists. They wore heavy work gloves, beanies pulled low to their eyebrows, and they moved with a singular, ugly purpose. They were not here to drink. The first one grabbed a wooden stool, spun, and shattered the antique mirror behind the bar. Glass exploded like a shotgun blast. Patrons screamed. The second man vaulted the bar itself, his boots kicking bottles of whiskey and gin onto the floor. The sharp antiseptic smell of juniper and corn mash cut through the stale air. The third man, the largest, simply started pushing people, not guiding, shoving hard. Tess did not shout. She moved. Years on the ambulance, triaging pileups on the Pacific Coast Highway, had taught her to categorize chaos, assess, act, stabilize. She saw the third man shove a terrified couple toward the exit, then turn his attention inward. His target was the corner booth. A man sat there, alone. He looked profoundly out of place. He was bookish, almost academic, wearing a dark brown coat that probably cost more than Tess's rent for 6 months. He was now trapped, pinned between the stampeding crowd and the wreckage of the bar. The man in the beanie was moving toward him, shoulder down, reaching deep into his own jacket. Tess saw the glint before the blade was even clear, a short, ugly hunting knife with a gut hook. Her flashlight, a heavy, 4-cell steel maglite, was already in her hand. She did not swing it like a club. That was for amateurs. She moved past the big man's clumsy, lunging punch, pivoting on her heel. She jammed the heavy metal end of the flashlight directly into the cluster of nerves on his wrist. It was not a strike to break, but a compliance technique to disable. The man roared, a deep, agonizing sound as his fingers lost all function. The knife clattered to the sticky floor. The man behind the bar turned, surprised by the speed. Tess did not give him time to recover. A straight front kick to the knee, hyperextending it with a sickening, wet pop. He went down, screaming a different tune. The third man, the one who had shattered the mirror, saw his partners neutralized in less than 10 seconds. He tried to bolt. Tess tackled him low, driving his shoulder into the doorframe with enough force to splinter the wood. She had her knee on his spine, her forearm pressed against his carotid, just shy of cutting off his air, but reminding him that she could. He was breathing hard, smelling of cheap soap and adrenaline. He turned his head, spitting a wad of blood onto the floorboards. He looked right at her, a broken-toothed grin spreading across his face. He laughed, a wet, rattling sound from deep in his chest. "Protect the boss," he hissed, the words bubbling. "Protect your mafia boss." He laughed again, louder, as if sharing the punchline to a joke only he understood. Tess's blood went cold. She glanced back, her grip tightening on the man beneath her. The bookish man was standing now. He was methodically adjusting the cuff of his dark brown coat. He was not bleeding. He was not sweating. He looked at the wreckage, the broken glass, the 2 men groaning on the floor, and then at Tess, his expression utterly, terrifyingly neutral. This was Dorian Mazzetti. Tess did not know the name, but she knew the type. He was the owner of a maritime logistics chain, a name sometimes whispered down at the docks when contracts went missing or containers vanished. He was calm, a deep, unsettling calm of a man who was not surprised by blood or screams. The sirens finally wailed in the distance. the Los Angeles Police Department, arriving, as always, 10 minutes too late. The man pinned under Tess spat one last time and went limp, a professional surrender, waiting for the cuffs, but the other two were gone. A customer pointed uselessly out the shattered door. A black, unmarked work truck had peeled out, vanishing into the traffic of the boardwalk. Tess kicked the fallen knife away. Standard procedure. When the police finally shuffled in, their faces bored, she pointed it out. One officer bagged it, but Tess had already seen the detail. Her mind, trained to spot medical alerts, catalogued anomalies. Etched into the cheap steel of the handle was a small, crude symbol, a lighthouse, unmistakable. With a thick line slashed diagonally through it, the Harbor Council. It was not just dock gossip. They were an organization that choked the West Coast shipping lanes, extorting businesses, silencing competition. Dorian Mazzetti approached the bar owner, who was pale and shaking. Tess watched as Mazzetti spoke quietly, his voice a low rumble she could not hear over the police radios. He reached into his pocket. He was paying for the entire bar. Cash. A thick stack of hundreds for the mirror, the liquor, the damages, and, Tess assumed, the silence. As he pulled his hand back, something small and black slipped from his coat and hit the floor, rolling to a stop by Tess's boot. It was a casino chip, not from Vegas. It was heavy, made of polished, cold obsidian. Etched into its center was a single, stylized letter V. It was a marker, a pass. In the world that existed beneath the neon of Venice, it was known as an absolution chit, a favor owed or a favor paid. Tess bent and picked it up just as Dorian turned. Not yet realizing he had dropped it, the sirens were fading as the police hauled the one conscious attacker away. Dorian looked at Tess, his eyes analytical, assessing her as she had assessed the threat. He opened his mouth, perhaps to thank her, perhaps to warn her. At that exact moment, a high-pitched whine cut through the night air, separate from the traffic. Tess, trained to identify sounds of distress, looked up. Outside the bar's ruined front window, a small, dark drone hovered, nearly silent. A tiny, perfect, ruby-red laser dot appeared. It danced off the broken glass and settled directly onto Dorian Mazzetti's throat, right over his pulse. It held there for 1 second, 2 seconds, a perfect measurement. Then the red dot vanished. The drone zipped up, disappearing over the rooftops. Someone was ranging a shot. Someone was planning, and they did not miss. Dawn broke gray and cold over the Delray piers. The smell of fish and diesel replaced the stale beer of the lighthouse. Tess was finishing her actual shift, changing out of her EMT greens in the ambulance bay. When he found her, Dorian Mazzetti was leaning against the sea wall, hands in the pockets of that same expensive brown coat. He looked like he had slept in it, yet somehow remained impeccable. "Miss Kincaid," he said. His voice was low, carrying easily over the cry of the gulls. "I owe you my thanks, and a new mirror for your bar. Coffee." He gestured to a small, steamy shack on the pier. Tess kept her distance, her heavy EMT bag slung over one shoulder. She studied him in the flat morning light, no visible tremors. Pupils normal. His breathing was even, slow. When she had gotten close to him in the bar, just after the laser dot vanished, she had instinctively read his vitals. She could see the steady, relaxed beat in his carotid artery. It was thumping at perhaps 70 beats per minute. A normal civilian who just had 3 thugs try to knife him and a sniper line him up should be running at 120, minimum. This man's heart rate was that of someone reading a newspaper. It was the absolute unnerving calm of someone intimately familiar with violence. "I am good, thanks," Tess said, her voice flat. "I was just doing my job." "You do it very well." He did not smile. His eyes scanned the pier behind her. Tess looked, too. Her eyes were sharp. She caught the reflection in the window of the bait shop. 2 black sport utility vehicles. Tinted glass. Government-style rims. They were parked 50 yards back, engines idling. Heat shimmering above their hoods. They were not hiding. They were a statement. "You have a busy morning," Tess said, nodding toward the cars. "It seems so," Dorian said, unbothered. "My offer stands. If you find yourself in need of anything at all." "I need to get some sleep." She turned to walk away. She made it halfway down the pier before a woman stepped out from behind a stack of lobster traps. The woman was all sharp angles, sharp suit, sharp haircut, sharp eyes. She held up a wallet, flashing a laminated card and a heavy-looking gold badge. "Tess Kincaid," the woman's voice was crisp. "All business." Tess stopped. "Who is asking?" "Special Agent Mara Quell, Pacific Anti-Organized Crime Task Force. Packed. We need to talk about last night." Tess crossed her arms. She knew feds. She knew LAPD. Packed, never heard of it. "We are new. We are also very busy," Quell said, snapping the wallet shut. "We know what happened at the Blue Lighthouse. We know you intervened." "It was a bar fight." "It was not a bar fight. You stepped into something you have no comprehension of. I am here, as a professional courtesy, to give you one warning. Stay away from Dorian Mazzetti. He's not a civilian. He is not your concern. Let him go." Tess bristled. The woman's tone was less a warning and more a command. "And if I do not—" Mara Quell stepped closer, her expensive perfume smelling like citrus and ozone. She lowered her voice. A confidential, lethal whisper. "The Harbor Council has issued a sinking order. That is their highest level directive. It means anyone who aids, abets, or even touches Mazzetti gets wiped from the board. They will sink his entire operation, and everyone in it. You saved him. You are now considered in it. You will be erased, Miss Kincaid." The threat hung in the salty air, but Tess was not looking at Quell's eyes. She was looking at the identification card Quell had not quite put away. Tess had spent hundreds of hours staring at driver's licenses, state IDs, and federal credentials, checking them against trauma reports. The font, it was wrong. It was a standard, clean sans serif, like something from a home printer. Government identification cards use specific, slightly older typefaces, and the batch number, embossed at the bottom, was crooked. The laminate was peeling, just slightly, at the top right corner. It was a very, very good fake, but it was a fake. "I hear you," Tess said, her voice neutral, the way it was when she was lying to a panicking patient. "Warning received." Quell nodded, satisfied. "See that you do." She turned and walked, not to a sedan, but toward the public street, disappearing into the morning foot traffic. That night, Tess knew she was right. She came home to her small apartment near the canals, and the lock was wrong. It was not broken. It had been picked, skillfully and reseated. Inside, the place was wrecked, but not with violence. It was a search. Cushions were off the couch, sitting mattress flipped, cabinets open. They had not been angry. They had been efficient. They ignored her laptop. They ignored the $87 in cash in her kitchen jar. They took one thing. Her old EMT duty logbook, a worn, spiral-bound notebook where she jotted down notes from her ambulance shifts, vitals, call times, locations, and, in the back, her personal list of emergency contacts, the numbers that were not public, the back line for the Port Authority dispatcher, her old mentor at the Long Beach docks, the shift supervisor for the private water taxi service. They had not stolen her valuables. They had stolen her network. She was cleaning up the mess, her hands shaking with a cold rage, when she saw the box by her door. It had not been there when she came in. It was a heavy-duty Pelican case, military grade. She opened it. Inside, nestled in custom-cut foam, was a trauma kit that made her EMT bag look like a child's toy. Quick-clot gauze, decompression needles, arterial tourniquets, sutures. It was thousands of dollars of battlefield-grade medical equipment. Underneath the kit was a phone. It was sleek, black, and heavy, a secure satellite phone. She powered it on. The screen glowed, no applications, no browser, just a single contact in the address book. The name read Night Harbor. As she was holding the secure phone, her own personal cell phone buzzed on the counter. a text message from an unknown number. It was a photograph. The quality was grainy, taken from a high angle. It was from last night, inside the blue lighthouse. It was a shot of her, kneeling. After the police had come, she had seen a small cut on Dorian's hand, probably from the flying glass. Habit took over, and she had grabbed a gauze pad from the bar's meager first aid kit to wrap it. The photo captured that exact moment, her head bowed, focused on his hand, him looking down at her. It was an intimate, quiet moment in the middle of chaos. Below the image, a single line of text. Mazzetti's property. Tess stared at the screen. This was not a warning to stay away, like the one from the fake pact agent. This was the opposite. This was a brand. The Harbor Council wanted her out of the way. This new, anonymous player wanted everyone to think she was already his. It was a threat designed to paint a target on her back, labeling her as a possession to incite a war. Tess used the secure phone. She hit the single contact, Night Harbor, and held her breath. He answered before the first ring finished. Mazzetti. The voice was low, filtered, but unmistakable. They tossed my apartment, Tess said, her voice tight with a cold fury. And someone, probably the same someone, sent a picture to my personal phone. A picture of you and me in the bar. The caption was Mazzetti's property. We are talking now. She expected him to argue, to delay. He just gave her an address in the Arts District. The building was an anonymous block of concrete and corrugated steel. She met him on the roof, the downtown Los Angeles skyline glittering like a circuit board against the smoggy night. The air was cold, and she zipped her EMT jacket tighter. They did not touch you, he stated. It was not a question. They touched my home. They threatened me. Who are you? She demanded. The man in the bar called you a mafia boss. What are you? Dorian Mazzetti walked to the edge of the roof, looking down at the slow-moving traffic, hands buried deep in his coat pockets. Mafia is a lazy word. It is a word from old movies. I am a logistician. But the docks, he paused, gesturing toward the dark void that was the ocean, are not a courtroom. The law is slow out there. Sometimes it does not show up at all. I am the shore collector. I provide order when the law is late. So you are a gangster, Tess said flatly. I am the reason a fisherman's catch does not get stolen by customs agents on the take. I am the reason a container of medicine does not get lost in the yard for 3 weeks. The Harbor Council, the men who attacked me, they do not want order, they want chaos. They want to burn the docks to claim the ashes. He turned to face her, his expression serious. They are not just thugs anymore. Tess, they have allied with a black-level technology firm, Synex Labs. They are using Synex to build automated shipping drones. They want to seize the entire port, replace every driver, every longshoreman, every pilot, with a machine they control. And Pact, Tess asked, the fake badge flashing in her memory. Special Agent Maraquel? Pact does not exist, Dorian said. It is a front, a ghost story the Harbor Council created to frighten their rivals and recruit insiders by pretending to be the law. Maraquel is Harbor Council. She is running their internal security. She did not warn you off me because she was protecting you. She was testing you, to see how you would react, to see if you were a threat or a pawn. Tess felt the pieces click into place, the fake ID, the specific threat, the apartment search. They were not trying to scare her away. They were trying to see what she was made of. They took my duty logbook, my contacts, my EMT family. They are civilians. I know. That is why I am here. I want a guarantee, Tess said, stepping into his space. She was shorter, but she held her ground, her EMT training giving her a posture of absolute authority. This filth, it does not touch my world, my partners, my supervisors, the dispatchers at the hospital. They are clean. You keep them out of it. You guarantee their safety unconditionally. Dorian looked at her, his eyes unreadable in the dark. That is a high price. You are asking me to protect a segment of the population I have no control over. And I saved your life. You owe me. He nodded slowly. I can. I will. I will make them untouchable. but that requires a trade. I need something from you. I'm not one of your shore collectors." "No," he said. "You are better. My men are dock workers and logistics managers. We are not soldiers. The council is escalating. They use violence as a first resort. My people and civilians are getting caught in the crossfire. I need you to teach my team tactical medicine, how to handle critical injuries under pressure, how to stop the bleeding when the ambulance is 30 minutes away." Tess stared at him. "You want me to teach your crew how to survive a firefight?" "I want you to teach them how to reduce civilian casualties," he corrected, his voice quiet, "including their own. You saved my life with a flashlight and a high kick. I want you to teach them how to save lives with gauze and pressure." "A guarantee for my people," Tess said, "in exchange for training yours." "A guarantee for your people," he confirmed. 2 days later, Tess was on a regular EMT shift, the deal with Dorian hanging heavy in her mind. The call came over the radio: pediatric distress, anaphylaxis, Santa Monica Pier. She and her partner found the family near the carousel. A little boy, maybe 6 years old, was on the pavement, his face swelling rapidly. His breaths coming in high-pitched, desperate wheezes. His lips were blue. "Bee sting," the mother sobbed, hysterical. Tess was on her knees, her training kicking in, walling off the panic. "Airway is closing. EPI now," she commanded her partner. She stroked the boy's hair, her voice dropping into a calm, steady rhythm. "Hey, buddy, I am Tess. I am going to help you breathe. You are going to feel a little pinch." "Okay, just a quick poke." She administered the epinephrine injection straight into his thigh. For 3 agonizing seconds. Nothing happened. Then the boy coughed, a deep, rattling intake of air. The blue faded from his lips. The wheezing subsided. As her partner loaded the now crying but breathing child onto the gurney, Tess stood up, her adrenaline starting to fade. She felt a stare. She looked past the crowd of tourists, leaning against a railing 50 yards away. Was Dorian Mazzetti. He was not wearing the coat. He was just in a dark shirt, watching. His face, usually a mask of control, was unguarded. He was not looking at her. He was looking at the boy, at the family reunited. He looked haunted. It was a flash of raw, unfiltered humanity that vanished the second he realized she saw him. He held her gaze, then turned and disappeared into the crowd. That night, her personal phone buzzed. A new message, a video file. It was security footage from the Blue Lighthouse, but it was heavily edited. It showed only her actions, cut from multiple angles. It showed her kick to the man's knee. It showed her tackling the third man. The audio was manipulated, amplifying the crack of the arm, the man's scream of pain. Text appeared over the screen, crisp and white. EMT Tess Kincaid, license number. It was her real certification number. Violation of public trust, extracurricular violence. The final screen was just a question, forward to review board. It was Mara Quell. It was blackmail, aimed directly at her livelihood. Tess immediately called the secure phone. "She sent me a video. She's threatening my license." "I expected it." Dorian's voice came back. "Meet me at Salt and Vapor. It is time you saw the map." Salt and Vapor was an art gallery in the Arts District. From the outside, it was graffiti and brick. Inside, it was a vast white space, but there were no paintings. Instead, high-definition projectors threw complex, moving images onto the walls. "This is my soft base," Dorian said, walking her through the main room. "The art is data." The projections were not art, they were maps. Tess recognized the satellite layout of the Port of Long Beach. The brush strokes were thousands of shipping containers, color-coded. "This is our ledger," Dorian said. "The blue containers are ours. The red ones belong to the Harbor Council. This is the territory we are fighting over." "Dorian, they're going to take my job." "They are leveraging you because you are effective," he said, tapping a console. A new window opened, displaying a text file. "My data team has been analyzing the phrase the attacker yelled at the bar, the one who got caught." Tess read the words on the wall. Protect the Mafia boss. He was sloppy, arrogant, while Dorian said, "It was not a warning, Tess. It was an internal operation code. Protocol M-Boss. M-Boss. Mazzetti boss." "A protocol for what?" "It is not a plan to protect me," Dorian said, his face grim as the projection shifted. "It is a trap. It is their campaign to frame me for a catastrophe, remove me from the board, and seize the port when it descends into chaos." The projections in salt and vapor shifted, the color-coded containers turning a deep, warning red. "Protocol M-Boss," Tess repeated, the words tasting like ash. A trap, but a trap for what and where? "Synex Labs," Dorian said, his voice hard. "The tech firm, the drones. The Harbor Council does not build. It takes. Synex is their new weapon. If we find their nest, we find the trap." Tess's mind went to the logbook, the one stolen from her apartment. They took her contacts, but they did not take her memory. She still had the back-channel numbers. She spent the next 24 hours calling in favors, speaking in old EMT codes, asking about over-hours maintenance and non-standard cargo manifests near the Synex corporate offices. A dock supervisor she had once pulled back from a diabetic coma owed her. He called back on the secure phone Dorian had provided. "It is not at their shiny headquarters." "Tess," he whispered, his voice tinny. "They are running trials out of a dead zone. Container Yard 77. It is supposed to be decommissioned, but it is burning more power than a small hospital, and the utility company has been ordered to keep quiet." Tess and Dorian went that night. Yard 77 was a graveyard of rusting steel, a maze of stacked containers under the sickly orange glow of the port lights. They moved through the shadows, Dorian as silent as a ghost, Tess matching him, step for step. She found the utility junction, the lock expertly bypassed, a heavy-gauge cable snaked from it, leading to a cluster of black, windowless containers at the yard's center. A laptop, a high-gain antenna. Tess recognized the setup. It was a wireless diagnostic port. She patched in the secure phone, letting Dorian's people back at the gallery do their work. The data stream was encrypted, but the log headers were not. They scrolled past lines of diagnostic code until one entry, time-stamped just 5 minutes prior, lit up the screen. M-Boss =, armed. "It is active," Tess whispered, feeling a cold dread. "The trap is set." They were back in the gallery before sunrise when a new contact appeared. A man named Skiff, a low-level information broker who survived by selling whispers from the docks. He was waiting for them, pale and sweating, his eyes darting to every shadow. "You should not have called me," Skiff stammered, wringing his hands. "The council. They are not playing. This is big." "What is big, Skiff?" Dorian asked, his calm voice making the small man flinch. "The sinking order. It is not just for you. It is for the whole port. They are planning an accident," he said, making air quotes with his trembling fingers. "A big one. A container ship. A fuel barge. Something that will block the channel for months. They are going to use their new Synex toys to do it, and they are going to pin it on your company. Mazzetti. They have already planted the digital evidence. Protocol M-Boss. It is a full-scale disruption. They will paralyze Long Beach, and when the smoke clears, they will be the only ones who can restore order. They will own the coast." Dorian was silent for a long time. The color-coded map of the port glowed on the wall, a silent testament to the empire he was about to lose. "I have to disappear," Dorian said, his voice devoid of emotion. "If I am the target, I remove the target. I will go dark. They will have no one to frame. The protocol will fail." "No," Tess said, stepping in front of him. "You will not. That is what they want. You run. You leave a vacuum. They will initiate the accident anyway and blame it on your flight. They will call you a coward who ran from his own mess. The docks will panic. The fishermen, the drivers. The civilians you claim to protect will be the ones who pay for it. You do not run. We break the trap." Dorian looked at her, his composure finally cracking, revealing the weight he carried. "Break it with what, Tess? They have drones, a ghost federal agency, and a plan to sink the entire harbor. I have a map and a handful of logistics managers." "Then we get a new team," Tess said. Recruitment was fast, built on loyalty and desperation. Juno Park, a hacker who moved on a vibration of pure caffeine and righteous anger, had been tracing Sinex for months. Boone Vega, a retired pilot whose pension had been lost by a company the Harbor Council now owned, knew every current and tidal shift from here to Catalina. Santiago, a young shore scout, could move from the canals to the breakwater without ever touching a public street. And Dr. Elara Nix, a data forensics analyst Dorian had on his payroll, was the one who could make the council's planted evidence tell the truth. They met in a disused warehouse, 5 of them looking at Tess. "You are Dorian's crew," Tess said, throwing the heavy Pelican case onto a table. It opened with a loud crack. "That means you are now targets. And when you get hit, you will not be in a hospital. You will be in a shipping container, or on a boat, or in an alley. So this is your new religion." She began her training. It was tactical combat casualty care, stripped down for the streets. Forget 911. You are the first responders. You have 90 seconds to stop a massive bleed. She grabbed a thick nylon cargo strap. "This is your tourniquet. You crank it until the bleeding stops and your partner screams. You do not loosen it." She kicked over a broken wooden pallet. "This is a splint. You find 2 solid pieces. You secure it. You immobilize the limb." She held up a small, rubber breather bag from a boat's emergency kit. "This is your airway. You learn to use it or you watch your friend turn blue." She was relentless, her EMT calm replaced by a drill sergeant's precision. She made them practice on each other, on dummies, her voice cutting through their fumbling. "Control the bleeding, control the airway, control the chaos." While Tess built a field medical team, Juno Park was dissecting their only piece of physical evidence, the obsidian chip. "Heads up," Juno called out, her fingers flying across 3 keyboards. "This V-chip, it is not just a pass. It is a key, a literal, old-school, analog key. It is designed to bypass a magnetic lock on a cold storage server." "A server?" Elara Nix asked, looking up from her own data. "The Vault Marina," Juno said, a new window popping onto the main screen. "It is the Harbor Council's real ledger, not their digital one. This is their physical transaction history. Every bribe, every threat, every payment from Sinex. It is all in one place, off-network, probably shielded from an electromagnetic pulse, and waterproof. And this little chip," she held up a photo of it, "is the front door key." A heavy silence fell over the room. All eyes turned to Dorian. He was pale. He slowly reached into his own pocket, his face a mask of dawning, horrifying realization. "I thought it was mine," he whispered. "What do you mean?" Tess asked, wiping grease from her hands. "The chip. I did not have it when I entered the bar," Dorian said, his voice hollow. "It was only after you took down the 3rd man, after the chaos. I reached into my coat and it was there, in my pocket. I assumed it had been there all along, but it was not." "It was planted," Tess said, the words landing like stones. "Mara Quell, the fake pact agent. She must have bumped you, slipped it in. The attack was not to kill me." Dorian realized. It was to deliver the key, the picture, Mazzetti's property. It was all to push you, to push us. They want me to find the vault. They are leading me there. It is a double cross, the emboss equal sign armed. Protocol is not just for the harbor. It is for me, at the vault. They were being herded. Tess looked at the glowing map on the wall. The Vault Marina was located at the end of a long, exposed pier, a perfect kill box. "Fine," Tess said, her voice cutting through the new wave of fear. "They want us to go to the vault. They think they control the field. They think we are the bait." She walked to the map, her finger tracing a different path, a dark, forgotten waterway that cut under the city. But if I am the bait, she said, her eyes finding Dorian's in the dark, I choose my own ground. She tapped the screen. We do not go by the pier. We go under it, the Bologna drainage tunnels. They connect to the old storm overflow. Right beneath the vault. They want a trap. We will pull them into the flood. The operation moved at the speed of the turning tide. The team split into 4 prongs, a hydra attacking from the shadows. Boone and Santee took the water, their low-profile speedboat painted a dull, non-reflective black. Idling in the deep shadow of the breakwater, Ilara was the remote network, the digital overwatch, burrowed deep in the salt and vapor gallery. Dorian was the diversion, the land element, and Tess, with Juno acting as her tech support, was infiltration. Tess's disguise was agonizingly simple. A bright blue coastal volunteer medic windbreaker over her EMT tactical pants. She carried 2 bags, her standard trauma kit, and a larger, heavier bag for Juno's gear. They passed the first checkpoint easily. The guards saw the medical insignia and waved her through, their eyes already scanning for bigger threats. The warehouse complex housing the Vault Marina was supposedly a restricted zone, but the pretense of a coastal cleanup drill provided the perfect cover. Miles away, at Pier 12, Dorian made his move. He did not use explosives. He used data. From a burner device, he activated a ghost signal, mimicking a high-priority container one registered to Synex Labs broadcasting a critical failure signal. It was the Echo, a digital scream for help. Within seconds, 2 Harbor Council patrol boats and a truck of Mara Quell's fake pact agents peeled away from the vault, speeding toward the false alarm. "That is our window," Juno whispered, her voice tight in Tess's earbud. Ilara confirms 30% of their manpower just moved. They slipped inside the warehouse during the shift change. The air was cold, damp, and smelled of rust. The Vault Marina was not a vault. It was a reinforced cold storage room, the kind used for sensitive data servers. Juno bypassed the maglock with a customized tool, the door hissing open on hydraulic seals. Inside, it was freezing. Racks of servers hummed, but the real prize was in the center, a heavy, lead-lined containment safe. Juno popped the electronic lock, her fingers flying, and hissed, "It is not digital, it is analog." Tess looked inside. It was not hard drives. It was a case filled with dozens of heavy, laser-etched platinum discs, a physical ledger, unhackable from a distance. "We cannot copy this, not fast enough," Juno said, her eyes wide. "We have to take the whole case." Tess did not hesitate. "Bag it." As Juno secured the heavy case, Tess saw the red light, a silent pressure sensor in the bottom of the safe. The alarm was not a bell. It was the sound of magnetic locks slamming shut all over the warehouse. Floodlights snapped on, bathing the yard in sterile white light. "They played us," Tess snarled, grabbing the case. It was heavy, maybe 60 pounds of dead weight. They wanted us to take it. "On comms," Ilara's voice crackled, panicked. "They are broadcasting Quell is on the local enforcement channel." Mara Quell's voice, now crisp and official, boomed over a loudspeaker outside. "This is Special Agent Quell. Packed. We have an active situation. A rogue EMT, Tess Kincaid, armed and unstable, has infiltrated this facility and abducted a civilian. Approach with extreme caution." "Abducted a civilian," Juno panted, hefting her own gear. "She is framing us live." They burst out of the server room onto a narrow external catwalk. 2 men in tactical gear were at the far end, raising rifles. Tess did not reach for a weapon. She grabbed the high-intensity rescue strobe from her jacket, aimed it, and hit the switch. The light was not just bright, it was a disorienting, rapid-fire pulse designed to induce vertigo. The men shouted, blinded, firing wildly as their vision tore apart. Tess slung the heavy case onto her back, the strap digging into her shoulder, and grabbed Juno. "Move!" They pounded down the narrow metal stairs, the case slamming against Tess's spine. Below them, the yard was filling with Quell's men. A sharp, metallic thunk sounded, followed by a puff of blue smoke, a Synex drone. The one from the bar, dropped from the sky, its sensors blinded. "A little help here," Dorian's voice came over the comms. He was on the roof of the adjoining warehouse. He was not firing bullets. He was firing a modified paintball gun. The rounds filled with powdered magnesium and cobalt. He fired again. Thunk. A second drone went offline, its optics coated, the air filled with the sharp, chemical smell of burning metal. "Dorian, the pier," Tess yelled, her lungs burning. "They are cutting us off." Quell and 4 of her team were blocking the path to the water. They were trapped. "Now, Boone," Dorian roared into his mic. The sound of the speedboat engine was deafening as Boone Vega shot out from under the pier, no longer silent. He was not aiming for the dock. He was aiming for the storm drain outflow. "The tide is turning. Kids, it is now or never." Dorian dropped from the roof, landing hard on the pier. He fired the last of his magnesium rounds, creating a wall of blinding blue smoke between them and Quell's team. "Tess, jump." Tess did not slow down. She reached the edge of the pier, the 60-pound case pulling her down, and launched herself into the darkness. She hit the cold, churning water, the shock of it stealing her breath. She felt a hand grab her jacket. Dorian, he had jumped with her. Boone's boat was right there, Santee hauling them over the side, dripping and gasping. They sped past the last of the pylons and plunged into the absolute blackness of the Bologna drainage tunnel, just as the sound of gunfire echoed uselessly off the concrete above them. They were safe. They were soaked. They were alive. In the darkness of the tunnel, lit only by the red glow of her console, Juno Park cracked open the lead-lined case. She pulled out the first platinum disc and slotted it into her high-speed scanner. "Alara, you online?" Juno asked, her voice shaking but triumphant. "Waiting. Juno, feed me the data." "Pushing it now," Juno said, a vicious grin spreading across her face. "And pipe it. Route it directly to the Harbor Council's own offshore money printer. Let us see how their malware likes choking on their own evidence." Boone's houseboat was a ghost in the Venice canals, nestled between 2 derelict fishing vessels, shrouded in fog. It smelled of old wood, diesel, and the deep, briny scent of the low tide. They huddled in the small cabin, soaked and shivering, the adrenaline of the heist finally draining away, leaving a cold, aching void. Santee and Boone were topside, securing the boat and running countermeasures, while Juno and Alara were already deep in the digital ledger back at the gallery. That left Tess and Dorian. "You are bleeding," Tess said. Her voice was flat, her EMT mode switching on, a welcome shield against the trembling in her hands. His jump from the roof had been clean, but his landing in the water, dragging her, had sent him scraping against a submerged pylon. A deep, 4-inch gash ran across his left shoulder, dark and weeping. "It is nothing," he said, wincing as he moved his arm. "It is arterial," she countered, pushing him down onto the small cabin bench. She retrieved the heavy pelican case he had given her. It felt like a lifetime ago. Shirt off. He obeyed without argument, pulling the soaked material off in the cabin's dim yellow light. His chest and shoulders were a map of old, faded scars. This new wound was bright and angry. Tess worked with practiced efficiency. She unpacked antiseptic, gauze, and a suture kit. Her hands were steady as she cleaned the wound, her touch firm and impersonal. But as she threaded the suture needle, the adrenaline crash hit her. A violent, uncontrollable tremor started in her fingers. The needle danced. "Damn it," she hissed, frustrated, pulling her hand back. Dorian, who had been sitting rigid, watching her, slowly reached out. He did not touch her, or the wound. He gently covered her shaking hands with his own. His were warm, steady. "Breathe, Tess," he said. His voice was impossibly soft. "I'm fine." "No, you're crashing. Just breathe. Like you told the boy on the pier. In for 4. Hold out for 6. She stared at him, stunned by the role reversal. But she was a professional. She recognized the logic. She closed her eyes, and she did it. In, Hold. Out. The tremor did not stop, but it subsided, becoming manageable. He kept his hands over hers until the needle was steady again. Better, he asked. Yeah. She began to stitch, her movements quick and precise. He did not flinch, just watched her face. I hate that, she whispered, her voice tight, focusing on the suture line. The shaking, losing my grip. You did not lose it, he said. I hate feeling out of control. It is why I do this, why I became a medic. I hate just watching things happen. She tied off the final knot with a sharp tug. I was on a ride-along before I was certified, a hit and run in Hollywood. The man bled out on the sidewalk before the ambulance arrived. I just stood there. I just watched. I swore I would never do that again. Dorian was silent for a moment. She began to tape the gauze pad over her work. I grew up on the docks, he said, his voice a low rumble. My whole world was the sound of foghorns and container cranes. I know about watching. I watched the Harbor Council muscle my father's business until it broke. I watched men lose their livelihoods because they could not pay for protection. He looked down at his own hands. You're afraid of losing control. I am afraid of being the reason for the blood, the men at the bar, the drones, the trap tonight. I am the justification, the sinking order. I am the target that makes it okay for everyone around me to drown. Tess finished taping. Her hands lingered on his shoulder, her touch no longer clinical. The space between them, which had been a sterile field, was now charged and small. The cold air from the canal, the creak of the hull, the sound of his breathing. She looked up. His eyes, usually so guarded and analytical, were open, raw. He was not the boss. He was just the kid from the docks, scared of the storm he had become. The distance closed. It was a shared, unspoken decision, a relaxation of shoulders, a slight tilt of head, and Tess's breath caught, and his matched it. She was the one who moved. Tess leaned in, her eyes open. It was slow, deliberate, a test. It was the way she checked the vitals of a victim, assessing for life, for a response. Her lips brushed his. It was a question, not a demand. He answered. He did not grab her, did not pull her. He met her, his mouth finding hers with a matching certainty. His hand, the one that had steadied her, came up to her neck. His fingers were light, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw, a silent gesture that told her she was in control. He was letting her lead. The kiss deepened, tasting of salt, adrenaline, and a desperate, shared relief. It was not a kiss of fire, it was a kiss of finding shore. He pulled back, just an inch, his forehead resting against hers. The cabin was nearly dark, the wind whistling through a small, open window. The salty air was cold, making her skin prickle. His other hand found hers, lacing their fingers together. Tess, he whispered, his voice rough. It was not a question, but a check-in. The okay she recognized from her own medical checks. A small, breathless laugh escaped her. I am okay. The second kiss was different. It was an acknowledgement, a mutual ceding of the armor they both wore. There was no roughness, no fumbling of a desperate encounter. It was a slow, harmonious exploration. It was the scrape of his stubble against her chin, the slide of his hand from her neck into her damp hair, the responding grip of her fingers in his. It was the shared warmth in the cold cabin. A quiet, deliberate discovery, a mutual promise to be gentle in a world that was exclusively violent. They moved together by the open window, a silent confirmation that they were both, finally, choosing to be grounded. Later, they lay on the narrow berth, the sound of the canal lapping against the hull. The storm of the night was over, replaced by this profound, exhausted calm, their heartbeats, once hammering from the fight and the fear, slowed, gradually falling into the same steady rhythm. Tess's head was on his chest, her hand flat over his heart, her fingers tracing idle circles over the new bandage. He spoke into the darkness, his voice resonating through her. From tonight on, he said, his words a solemn vow. "I protect your right to choose before I protect myself." The quiet of the houseboat was shattered by the crackle of the secure line. Juno and Alara had been working non-stop back at the gallery, fueled by caffeine and the adrenaline of the heist. The platinum discs were yielding their secrets. "We have a problem," Alara's voice was clipped. "All business. This is not one organization. It is a hydra. 3 heads, the ledger shows 3 equal partners running the Harbor Council." "Who?" Dorian asked. He was sitting on the bench, Tess's stitching pulling tight as he moved. First, Kazimir Volkov. He runs the offshore enforcement, the muscle. Second, Inez Caldera. She handles the Sinex Labs integration and the dirty money. And the third partner. Alara paused, as if verifying the data one last time. "It is Mara Quell. She's not just internal security. She is the Harbor Council. The fake pact agency is her entire creation, her personal kingdom to strong-arm the port." Tess felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. Quell was not just a player, she was the queen. "It gets worse," Alara continued. "We found the protocol emboss entry. It is not just a plan, it is a date, August 17th, the Santa Monica High Pier." Tess knew the date. It was 3 days from now. "The Summer Fireworks Festival," she said, her voice hollow. "The pier will be packed, thousands of people." "They are planning their maritime accident for that night," Alara confirmed. "They will use the fireworks to cover the explosions. They will sink the ship and pin it on you, Dorian, right in front of a live audience of the entire city. The panic, the casualties. It would be catastrophic." Dorian's face was stone. "Then we burn them. We leak the ledger. We give it to every newspaper, every federal agency. We expose Volkov, Caldera, and Quell right now." "No," Tess said immediately, standing up. "You cannot think it through. You dump that data. What happens Quell with her pact credentials will deny it. She will call it a fabrication, a desperate act by a known criminal. You, Volkov and Caldera, will vanish, their money already gone, and the accident at the pier. They will just trigger it early as a final screw you and blame the fallout on the innocent dock workers, the ones whose names are now linked to this ledger. You will be clearing your name while the people you protect burn for it." "Then what do we do, Tess?" he shot back, his frustration palpable. "We sit on the only evidence we have." "We do not leak it, we leverage it," Tess said, her mind racing, connecting the pieces. "It is a hydra, right? You cut off one head, 2 more grow. But if you get all 3 heads in the same place, that is a different story. Alara, the ledger. Where is their money? Their main account." "It is a slush fund," Alara said. "Massive. But it is smart. It requires a multi-signature cryptographic key to move any significant funds. All 3 of them, Volkov, Caldera, and Quell, must be present and provide their unique key simultaneously." "There it is," Tess said, a grim satisfaction in her voice. "That is our trap. We do not go after them, we go after their bank account. We create a situation where they must access that fund, a system hostage exchange. We force all 3 of them to show up, in one place, to save their money. We get them all on camera, unlocking their empire of dirty cash. We expose them in the act." Before Dorian could argue, Boone's voice crackled over the comms, sharp with panic. "Tess, we have a new problem, a big one. It is Skiff." "What about Skiff?" Tess grabbed the handset. "He's gone. The council grabbed him. They just sent this to my terminal." A video feed appeared on Juno's nearby laptop. It was Skiff. He was tied to the railing of a rusted barge, the open ocean behind him. He was terrified, gagging on a rag. Mara Quell stepped into the frame, holding the obsidian V-chip, the one Tess had recovered from the bar floor between 2 fingers, displaying it to the camera. "A simple trade, Miss Kincaid," Quell's voice said, smooth and condescending. "We have your informant, you have our property. This chip is a unique key, and we want it back. You will bring it to the Santa Monica Pier, 2 hours before the fireworks. You come alone. If we see Mazzetti or any of your new friends, Mister, Skiff goes for a swim. permanently. The feed cut. "She knew I had it," Tess whispered. "The photo she sent, Mazzetti's property. It was never about me. It was about the chip. She wanted me to have it." "It is another trap," Dorian said, standing up, his jaw set. "She wants you on that pier." "But why?" Juno asked, frantic. "Why is that one chip so important the vault was a bust?" "Wait," Alara said, her voice suddenly tight with alarm. "Juno, run a density scan on that chip image. The ledger mentioned a social trigger linked to Sinex. Oh, God." Juno's fingers flew. "Alara, it is not just obsidian. There is a microcircuit embedded, a pressure plate, and a proximity sensor. It is a dead man's switch." "Speak English, Juno," Tess snapped. "It is a data bomb," Alara cut in. "The chip is a failsafe. If it is taken more than, say, 500 meters from the coastal network, like onto a boat, or inland, the sensor triggers. It is not an explosive. It is a wipe. It is designed to corrupt and destroy every piece of data associated with the Harbor Council and Sinex Labs. It would burn their entire network, including all the evidence we just stole. It is a self-destruct key." "She is not trying to get it back," Tess realized, the blood draining from her face. "She's trying to get me to move it. She wants me to run, to take it inland, to destroy the evidence against her. And if I do not, Skiff dies, and she blames me for his murder, too." "I will go," Dorian said, his voice a low growl. "I will take the chip. She wants the pier. She will get me. I am the target. It ends there." "No," Tess spun on him, her fury matching his. "Stop trying to be the martyr. You are the target, Dorian, which is exactly why you cannot go. She wants you on that pier. You are Protocol M, boss. You show up. You walk right into their final trap. But me." She held up her EMT windbreaker. "I am just a medic. I am the one they are pressuring. I am the one they expect to trade a life for a piece of plastic. They think I am a pawn. They think I am sentimental." Dorian looked at her, the promise from the night before to protect her choice visible in his eyes, warring with every instinct he had. "Okay," Tess said, her voice becoming the calm, steady tone of a medic running a critical scene. "Here is the plan. It is two-layered. Juno, can you duplicate the physical chip, the weight, the feel?" "Give me 2 hours," Juno said. "You have one," Tess said. "We give Mara Quell her fake. We play her game on the pier. But the real chip stays with us. We do not move it. We do not let it trigger. We use it." "Alara, you said it unlocks their multi-signature account." "It is one of the 3 keys, yes," Alara confirmed. "Then, while I am on that pier distracting Quell," Tess said, her eyes locking with Dorian's, "you, Juno, and Alara are going to be sitting just inside that 500-meter radius, and you are going to use that real key to drain their entire slush fund, every last cent. We are not just going to expose them, we are going to break them. We will send all of it to an anonymous holding fund, the Coastal Relief Commons. We will give the port back to the people they stole it from." The Santa Monica High Pier was a river of humanity, flowing toward the sea. The air throbbed with a strange energy, a mix of cotton candy, popcorn, and the sharp tang of the coming fireworks. Above the chatter of thousands, classical music swelled from the pier's loudspeakers, a bizarrely elegant soundtrack to the crushing crowd. The first test rockets hissed into the sky, exploding in emerald and sapphire blossoms that reflected in the dark. Churning waves below. Tess moved against the current, her blue EMT jacket a beacon of neutrality in the chaos. She kept her head down, the fake obsidian chip a perfect weighted replica from Juno's 3D printer taped securely under a thick gauze pad on her wrist, as if she were nursing a sprain. She felt the weight of it, a cold, useless piece of plastic that held the life of one man and the fate of a dozen others. She felt Dorian before she saw him. He was a shadow detaching itself from other shadows near the bait shop. He wore a simple baseball cap pulled low, blending in perfectly with the tourists. The only thing out of place was the heavy backpack he carried, inside which was a low-frequency jammer, a desperate, unproven defense against the Sinex drones. "Comms are hot," he murmured, falling into step beside her. "Juno and Alara are in the van, 400 meters from the shoreline. They are inside the radius. Boone and Santi are in the water. Dark." "It is too many people," Tess said, her eyes scanning, triaging the crowd for threats. "If this goes wrong—" "You made the plan, Tess," he said, his voice firm, pulling her focus. "Now walk the line." He stopped at the barrier, blending back into the crowd. She walked on, alone. The barge was moored at the far end of the pier, just beyond the last tourist-packed restaurant. Mara Quell was waiting, flanked by two men in her signature fake-pack tactical gear. She looked immaculate, her sharp suit untouched by the humidity, her expression bored. "Right on time, medic," Quell said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I see you brought the party favor. Hand it over." Tess's eyes flickered to the barge. Skiff was there, tied just as he was in the video, his face pale with terror. But he was not alone. Standing near the stern, silhouetted against the glittering coastline, were two other figures, a large, brutal-looking man in a cashmere coat, Kazimir Volkov, and a woman, Inez Caldera, sharp and sterile in a white pantsuit, who looked at Tess as if she were something unpleasant on her shoe, the three heads of the Hydra, all present, all drawn by the lure of their precious key. "Let him go first," Tess said, gesturing to Skiff. Quell laughed, a short, sharp bark. "That is not how this works. The chip—" "Tess!" Juno's voice crackled in her ear, sharp and fast. "The pier speakers are mine. Clearing the dance floor. Stand by." Suddenly, the classical music cut off, replaced by a blaring, repetitive automated warning. "Maritime warning, maritime warning. All vessels maintain a 1,000-yard perimeter. Coast Guard activity in this sector." The tourist boats and yachts that had gathered to watch the fireworks immediately sputtered to life, their captains spooked by the official sounding order. Within 60 seconds, the water around the barge was clear, a dark, empty zone. Boone's small boat, hidden in the pier's shadow, was now the only thing close. "Cute," Quell snarled, unnerved by the sudden isolation. "The chip, now." "Fine." Tess began to unwrap the medical tape from her wrist. She drew out the movement, letting the tape fall slowly. "Alara," Tess whispered, "hit it!" Quell reached for the chip. At that exact moment, every single large-screen LED billboard on the pier advertising sodas, tourism, and fishing charters flashed, went black, and then lit up with new information. It was the ledger. It was screenshots of transactions, offshore accounts, and payoffs from Sinex Labs. And at the top, in giant, bold letters, Harbor Council leadership, Kazimir Volkov, Inez Caldera, Mara Quell. The crowd on the pier, momentarily confused by the maritime warning, now stopped, people pointing, phones coming out, filming the massive screens. Quell's head snapped toward the display, her face a mask of pure disbelief. Volkov and Caldera turned, too. That was the moment. "Now, Dorian!" Tess screamed. Kazimir Volkov was fast, pulling a heavy-caliber pistol from his coat. He never got to aim it. Dorian exploded from the shadows of the pier's lower structure, vaulting onto the barge. He was not aiming for Volkov. He was aiming for his hand. He slammed a heavy-duty cargo strap against the man's wrist, then looped the strap around the thick mooring cleat, pulling it tight with a violent, practiced yank. The gun clattered. Volkov roared, his arm now anchored to the barge. Tess was already moving. As Volkov was neutralized, she sprinted past Quell, her EMT shears in her hand. She sliced through the zip ties holding Skiff, hauling the terrified man to his feet. "Go!" she yelled, shoving him toward the railing. Boone's boat surged forward, Santi reaching out, pulling Skiff aboard. "Kill them!" Inez Caldera screamed, her composure breaking. She stabbed a finger at a control panel. From compartments on the barge's deck, 4 Sinex drones rose, their blue sensor lights locking onto the boat. "Tess, blanket," Dorian yelled, Tess grabbed the emergency Mylar blanket from her trauma bag. She unfolded it, holding it up like a shield. It was a desperate, analog defense. The drone's thermal sensors, looking for the heat of the boat's engine, were suddenly blinded by the massive, chaotic reflection of the cold night sky. A high-pitched whoomph split the air. The first grand finale firework exploded directly overhead, a massive concussion of red and gold that shook the pier. It was the perfect cover. Dorian ripped the jammer from his backpack, slammed the activation switch, a subsonic pulse, masked by the fireworks boom, invisible, hit the drones, their sensors overloaded. One spun wildly, crashing into the water. The others wobbled, their blue lights flickering to red, their connection to Caldera severed. Mara Quell was already running. She jumped from the barge back onto the pier, shoving her way through the stunned, phone-wielding crowd. She was almost clear, almost to the shore, when her path was blocked. It was not police. It was not packed. It was 15 men in weathered jackets and rubber boots, fishermen, dock workers, the volunteer coastal rescue team that Dorian had been quietly funding for years. They did not touch her. They simply stood, forming a silent, solid semicircle, blocking her exit. "Drop the weapon, ma'am," one of them said, his voice calm, respectful, but unyielding. Mara's hand went to her holster. She looked at the faces, no fear, just exhaustion and resolve. She looked left, right. There was no escape. Slowly, her hand came away empty. The trap was shut. The finale of the fireworks display boomed overhead, a cascade of white and gold that illuminated the scene on the pier with the harshness of a flashbang. The smoke, smelling of sulfur, drifted down, mingling with the salt spray, on the barge. Casimir Volkov was securely lashed to the mooring cleat with a cargo strap, roaring in frustration, in the water. Boone and Santi's boat was idling as they hauled in a heavy fishing net, inside of which Inez Caldera was tangled, sputtering and furious. And on the pier, Mara Quell was surrounded by the silent wall of fishermen. She was, for the first time, completely out of options. "Alara, talk to me," Tess said, her voice low and steady, her eyes fixed on Quell. "The ledger is fully decoded," Alara's voice came back, crisp and triumphant. "It is all here. Extortion on port contracts, racketeering, and the full Sinex Labs agreement. They were not just building shipping drones. Dorian, they were building armed drones. The accident at the pier was to be their public demonstration total chaos, followed by a secure port run by their automated, weaponized fleet. The crowd on the pier was buzzing, their phones all pointed at the LED screens, which were now cycling through the most damning of the Platinum Discs files. They were witnessing street-level justice, live and unedited. Tess walked up to Mara, her blue EMT jacket a stark contrast to the tactical gear Quell's men had worn. "Bring her to the barge." The fishermen parted, and two of them gently but firmly escorted Quell onto the deck, where Dorian was waiting. "Juno, are you ready?" Tess asked, pulling the real obsidian chip from her own pocket. "The multi-sig account is primed," Juno's voice crackled. "But I need all 3 keys, Volkov's, Caldera's, and hers, and I have a new feed running. It is pushing a live video stream, with the ledger data as an overlay, directly to the Coastal Volunteer Rescue app. Every fisherman, dock worker, and boat captain from here to San Pedro is watching this, right now." Tess turned to Mara. "You heard her. Open it." You cannot do this," Mara stammered, her authority stripped away, revealing the desperate woman beneath. "You are an EMT. This is vigilantism. Let me go. I will make a deal. I will give you Volkov. I was just—" "You were just what?" Tess snapped, her voice cutting through the night. "You were just the architect. You built a fake federal agency. Mara, you used the trust people have in first responders to threaten, extort, and intimidate. You were going to let thousands of civilians get caught in the crossfire tonight to sell your robot army. There are no more deals." Tess looked at Volkov, then at Inez, who was now being hauled, dripping and defeated, onto the deck. "All of you. Your keys. Now." One by one, under the live gaze of the entire coastal community, they complied. Volkov gave a voice passkey, bitter and spat. Inez, a complex numeric code from a waterproof fob. Mara, her face pale, authorized the final transfer with a thumbprint on a secure tablet Juno had provided. "It is moving," Ilara said, her voice hushed. "The entire slush fund. It is all... My God, it is all draining." "Where does it go?" Mara whispered, horrified. "To the coastal relief commons," Dorian said, stepping out of the shadow. His voice, calm and steady, carried. "It will be managed by a board of public longshoremen and local fishermen. Anonymous proof of the donation and the ledger will be sent to them tonight. The Harbor Council's money is now the people's." "Sinex," Inez suddenly screamed. "They will erase everything. You have nothing." "Negative," Juno's voice chirped. "Sinex just triggered their data wipe protocol. They are trying to scrub their logs. But I was faster. I uploaded a forensic payload into their mainframe while they were busy watching the fireworks. Their logs are not erased. They are locked, preserved, and already being piped to Ilara. They cannot deny their complicity. They are chained to the evidence." The sound of official sirens, the real ones, grew closer. The Port Authority, called by the fishermen, was finally arriving. They found a bizarre, perfectly gift-wrapped scene, Volkov tied to a cleat, Caldera wrapped in a net, and Mara Quell standing next to a tablet showing a zero balance on what was once the most powerful black fund on the coast. Tess and Dorian slipped away in the confusion, melting back into the crowd, leaving the authorities to clean up the mess. They met Ilara, Juno, and the team at a safe house overlooking the water, the pier now a sea of red and blue flashing lights. Dorian was quiet, turning the real obsidian V-chip over and over in his hand. It was his absolution chit, the symbol of his old world power, the marker that meant he was immune. The next morning, he met a woman on a quiet bench in Marina del Rey. She was not a gangster. She was a public defender, the head of a small, non-profit law firm called the Coastal Legal Collective. Dorian looked at the chip one last time, then handed it to her. "This is the key to the Harbor Council's physical vault. There is more evidence in there. It belongs to the people your firm represents. I will not be needing it again." Tess had watched from a distance. She walked up as the lawyer left, her face full of a complex relief. She put her hand on Dorian's arm. "From now on," she said softly, "you do not need a chit. You need standards." Dorian looked at her. His eyes, which had held the calm of a man who faced down death, were now unmistakably wet. He was relieved. He was terrified. He was, for the first time, free from the world that had defined him. He nodded, unable to speak, and gripped her hand. The Harbor Council did not disappear quietly. It shattered, and the shrapnel hit the entire coastline. The immediate aftershock for Dorian was brutal. His old shadowy clients, the ones who relied on his logistics to move questionable cargo, emerged, demanding reparations for broken agreements. The whispers on the docks were toxic. Mazzetti betrayed the underworld. He is a rat. The order he had maintained for years was gone, and the vacuum was filling with chaos. He did not fight back with the old rules. Instead, he called a meeting in a cavernous port warehouse. He did not invite his old contacts. He invited the fishermen, the longshoremen, and the union leaders. In front of them all, he publicly dissolved his shore collectors. "The old way is finished," he announced, his voice echoing off the steel beams. "The harbor was run on leverage and fear. From now on, we protect it with transparency and the law." He signed over his remaining logistics assets, not to an heir, but to the newly formed Coastal Relief Commons. He was no longer the man who kept order with threats. He was funding the legal aid that would make those threats obsolete. Tess, meanwhile, faced her own tribunal. The blackmail video Mara Quell had created had been anonymously leaked to the EMT review board. She stood in a sterile conference room, her license and her livelihood on the line. "Miss Kincaid, this footage shows actions inconsistent with the duties of a medic. It shows extreme violence," the lead reviewer stated grimly. Before Tess could offer her defense, the administrator was interrupted by his assistant carrying a thick stack of papers. "Sir, you need to see this." It was a flood. Over 200 emails had arrived that morning, dozens of video testimonials from dock workers, letters from fishermen. A long, tearful statement from the family of the boy she had saved from anaphylactic shock on the pier. They did not paint a picture of a rogue agent. They painted a picture of a guardian, the only one who ran toward trouble when the law was late. The board reviewed the new evidence. Her license was cleared with a formal commendation. Mara Quell's trial was a public spectacle. Faced with the immutable forensic data from the Synex servers and the testimony of her own partners, she confessed. Her testimony exposed the packed fraud, the ghost agency she had built to weaponize public trust. It became a national story, a stark warning about the bureaucratic shadows that allowed such corruption to thrive. 6 months passed. The gallery, Salt and Vapor, reopened. The projectors that once displayed shipping manifests in red zone territories now showed anatomical charts and CPR protocols. Dorian had turned the entire space over to the Coastal Relief Commons as a permanent, free coastal first aid training center. Tess, on her day off, stood at the front, teaching the inaugural class. Her students were boat captains, young longshoremen, and boardwalk vendors, all learning how to pack a wound and manage an airway. That evening, they met on the small wooden footbridge over the Bologna Canal. The air was cool and clear. Tess, still in her civilian clothes, stepped close to him, resting her head on his chest. She placed her palm flat against his shirt, feeling the steady, solid beat beneath. It was not the slow, hyper-controlled, 70 beats per minute pulse of the man in the bar. It was just a heart, warm, relaxed, and present. He did not kneel. He did not present a ring. He simply reached into his pocket and took out a single, worn, brass key. He pressed it into her palm. "It is the key to the houseboat," he said, his voice quiet, lacking its usual measured authority. He was nervous. Boone signed the title over. "It is an anchor. If you want it, no rings, no chits, just an anchor." Tess looked at the simple key, then up at his face. She saw the man who had faced down snipers and drones, terrified of this one simple question. She smiled, a slow, genuine smile that lit her eyes. She closed her hand tightly around the key. "I choose self-determination," she whispered. She rose on her toes, pressing a soft, certain kiss to his lips. "And I choose you. I choose you because you chose the people first, and you chose us second." As they stood there, a sudden streak of crimson shot into the sky from the dark ocean horizon. It was not a firework. It was a standard rescue flare, a bright, functional signal of safety from a boat that had reached its destination. The red light bathed their faces, reflecting in their eyes. They did not hide from it. Their story did not end in the shadows. It ended here, on the coast, with the sound of distant waves and the faint laughter from the pier. They were not hiding. They were standing together, visible and accountable. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are listening from, so please comment below and let us know your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe to Mafia Boss Stories, like this video, and give us extra support by hitting that hype button to help this story reach more listeners.